Okay, Togozani. This is Gokonomi. Today I also want to discuss Isituna, because I feel like it's also such a hot topic right now. Like, a lot of people are deciding, oh, I can't just have idlozi, I must have isiThunywa too, or wherever I get initiated, I would like to do both. And I think it's possible, you can do both in a place. But I also think it does help you to do idlozi first and later to do izinto zesithunywa. Simply because I feel like, number one, idlozi is more rigid and hard. Like I feel like it really helps to shape and mold a person. And that's why I always would advise people, Guti, start with that first, and I just want to say, this is my perception, this is my understanding of all the things that I talk about. So I'm not saying that the things that I'm saying here are Bible, or I'm not saying that this is the way that things are and they can't be done differently. No, I'm saying from my perspective, this is how I've seen it, and this is how it's happened with me as a person, and maybe for someone else it will be helpful and beneficial. So, for example, I went Ngenzi, and I think everybody knows now that I obviously trained in the first place and things didn't work out for me in the first place. And so I had to then start again in a new place. And luckily, thankfully, things did work out for me in another place, But what I can tell you is that in both instances, I was a very resistant Dlozi child, So I was doing the thing and I was walking the journey of training, but I really did not want to become a healer. It was like the worst thing in the world that could have happened to me as a person, even more as a smart person, or at least that's what I thought at the time, because I had never grown up equating becoming a healer with anything smart, with anything intelligent. In fact, if I'd walk into a place and there'd be a healer, or I'd sit in a taxi with a healer, I would literally freak out, and weirdly enough, I was actually freaking out because that's what I would later become, So it's like my body and my psyche and my entire system knew, Guti, this is who you are, and this is why this thing scares you so much, and this is why you don't want to be around this thing so much, because hey, that's you. But then I obviously had numerous people who I feel also did help mentor me along the way, also did help to just talk to me about why it is important for me to be a healer, as opposed to why I shouldn't want to be a healer. And it then became clear to me along the way that, you might actually like this, you might actually enjoy this, and you need to do it, right? But I feel, Uguti, I needed to do that and be full in that, because that was hard, everything about it was hard. Like, I don't ever look back at healing, even today, and ever think that uktwasa is easy, or ever think that ukuba iSangoma is easy, because none of those aspects are easy, for me, I feel like a day-to-day of being a healer is actually way harder than what people think, or way harder than what people imagine it to be, simply because it's such a dynamic role to play. You might not feel like being nice to people on a certain day because you're going through your own thing, but you have to put up a smile. You have to be nice to people, you have to be kind, you have to actually want to help people every single day of your life, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, and then also, you probably come from maybe Elokshini, or a place that's not very suburban, right? Where people have a lot of thoughts around, oh, this is how a Sangoma dresses, this is how a Sangoma behaves. So whether you know it or not, you conform, And if you do it as young as I did it, in your early 20s, like, that's who you become, right? You become that person who can't dress in a certain way, who can't speak in a certain way, who can't be seen in certain spaces, because this is the expectation that other people have of you. This is not necessarily who you are, or not necessarily your reality, And some of us conform and some of us don't, but I'm a conformist. Like, I've never wanted people to see me as bad, for example. I've always wanted to follow the narrative that people believe that a healer is, and that's always been me, right? But when I had to go through and do isiThunywa, that was like even harder for me, because in as much as I believed in ancestors and spirituality, there was a lot about the Bible and about God that over the years I had been questioning just as a person. So I felt that I wanted to do this later in my life when I was more mature, and I would be able to actually commit to going to church, actually commit to knowing that esontweni, now you might be asked to preach. Now when people have funerals, you might be asked to be the person who does the prayer. At a birthday party, because when people are expecting this light from you, and you actually also have to be that person, like you can't fake being a godly person. You can't fake, the process of being a person who stands with God, because if you're spiritual, it actually also shows through the person. Like there is a literal beam of light that people will see around you if this is really who you are, and if you really have accepted a godly path in your life. So part of my process was really like, because obviously I was already a mentor to other people, so I couldn't be there every single day and stay in the place anymore, because I also have to train my students. But I would literally go there. I think I did it for like 7-8 months. Every single weekend I would go there and I would do my prayers and whatever. And in the beginning I really thought, oh gee, this is so pointless, because I could do this in my house. I don't have to really be at this lady's house, for example. I don't really have to be around these people, because also the discomfort of being in a place that's not home, it's just a lot on its own. But as time moved, I realized that as a human being, if isiThunywa is done right, you become softer, you become kinder, and you actually represent more love than anything else. So you even begin to think a lot about your words towards people and how you approach people, because now every week you are discovering different messages about God and who God is and who God isn't, and this begins to change you as a person. I like to joke a lot about idugeli mhlophe and how even that changed my life. So I can't stay too long now without wearing idugu, because it's almost like I feel like I have a covering, and this covering protects me from so much. And even when I'm wearing it, I've noticed that I'll meet people and people will be kinder and gentler to me, but they're not realizing ukuthi it's because I apere this light, on that particular day, for example. But, the long and the short is that this was also a time at which I was willing to mature and accept love. It was a time when I was willing to look at my life and say, actually, I think I'm worthy even of love, and I say it a lot to people, but this is also when, as a healer, I was able to let someone else in who could love me, who I did not feel like anymore I'm like running away from the fact that I'm a healer and I don't want to explain this to a partner. So it came at a time in my life where I feel like I was also ready to accept love, because that's what isiThunywa really is. isiThunywa has more to do with love, and warmth, and being the kind of person who represents a different kind of divinity, because you can heal people all your life, but maybe the way that you do it does not necessarily have to be in a loving way, and for me, it introduced a completely different aspect of life to me, in that I became a person who became more intentional with love, and because now I was older and I was wiser, I could actually see the distinct differences in the person that I am, as opposed to if I had done it in my first training, which that really was what I was supposed to do. So in my first training, I was supposed to do isiThunywa nedlozi at the same time. And I look back now and I understand why I didn't do them together at the same time, because I wasn't ready for isiThunywa, and isiThunywa really did a lot. Like, it did a lot of messing with my life. I don't want to lie to you. And that's why I decided to take it on, because I started to see, man, this thing is eating at me. I was even losing weight again, and now, like, I'm so much bigger, bigger than what anyone has ever seen me before. But I also realized that I'm happier, just as a person. And I just thought that maybe I would share this message with someone else who maybe is battling also with these journeys and is feeling like, they really don't understand what these things are about, So to me, this is really what they're about. The one I think is more around, digging deep into someone and like giving them a base, And then I think the other one is about love and prettiness and about, just putting that top layer onto something that was rough around the edges and really making this thing beautiful now and acceptable, but in a way that this person feels like inside they are healed, they're not hollow, and when you use them together in unison, you should actually feel a shift in you as a person. You should always be happy without validation. You should always feel balanced without anybody else wanting to validate you, and you should even know the differences between the people who come into your practice of, okay, so today, this person who's coming, I need to approach maybe with a Bible, because I can see Uguti, where they come from, they don't know much about idlozi. So it's not going to help me to help this person this way today, for example. It doesn't mean that later I won't take this approach, but maybe right now, this is not the approach that's necessary for the messages that this person will receive, Or you'll see someone who comes in and you can see, this person's stuff is like deeper, and I really need to dig. And so I'll use this in order for me to be able to dig. And then you'd use your bones, to really dig and ask a lot of questions so that this person goes home with a lot more depth, But I can say, Guti, the one other thing that isiThunywa did for me was it actually taught me how to sing, like to sing from a hearty place. Like my Gobela jokes about it all the time. It's like, yo, solo buya isiThunyweni, uyakwazi ukucula, and I'm more confident just as a person in how I do things, because I feel that God is by my side. I feel that these angels that I walk with are literally there with me all the time. And it's also helped to heighten my Dlozi practice and my Dlozi work, and even how I'll send a child home, for example. Prayer has become at the forefront of the bulk of the work that I do for other people, and it's helped me a lot, just as a very spiritual person. I've been able to understand why both worlds mattered to me, why it was important to for a very long time, and some of those things, I think, it's not a topic that I will discuss, because I feel like our views are very different on certain things as people. But for me, it was also the point at which I knew, Guti, say for instance, I was going to get married to someone else, I would be able to succumb to the rules and laws of being umakoti, because in a godly way, I've already done these things, If I have to behave in a certain way to be someone's wife, for example, I would cope, because the Bible has taught me certain things and certain scriptures that made me understand why it has to be this way for a woman or for a female, But likewise, it also taught me things like trusting my dreams, and knowing Uguti as a prophet, the things that you see are going to happen. The things that you see do mean something. And so you shouldn't ever ignore messages from God, or you shouldn't ever ignore messages from your ancestors, because this is actual guidance that you're receiving over time, And I also do believe also that you don't have to go to someone's house to do isiThunywa, I, on the other hand, believe that I needed to, because I can't, like, I need sequence in order for me to complete things, right? So certain spaces create sequence for me, and on that Friday my mind would shift out of, for example, being gokonomi or being this gobela and being a student, and in the environment of a student, that's exactly how I would behave. I would be there wanting to learn, wanting to suck knowledge, writing things down, and literally, starting to move out on a Sunday into a Monday in my practice, but starting to implement the stuff that I had learned over time, and this for me was interesting because I also knew, Guti, when they say someone is your gobela, they literally mean that you would bend over to do whatever this person is doing, and I needed to shift out of being a gobela to ukugobela umthetho womunye umuntu in that period. And that taught me that I'm still malleable, I can still be shaped. It doesn't mean because I'm an elder or a father to other people that to other people I can't kneel down, and to other people I can't listen, and to other people I can't be respectful, And I think it happened at a monumental stage in my life because so much of my life was moving upward that I did need to stay grounded, and so I think the decision was made by my ancestors, actually, Guti, now is the time that this person needs this, because we need for this person to stay grounded forever, because I don't think I'm going to go for another training, thankfully, hopefully, in my lifetime. But this one has really been, it shaped me so much as a person that I will never disrespect someone else. I will never think that I can't learn from someone else, because you can. There's so much more to learn. And then the last thing is that it also unlocked a lot of my herb knowledge, which I feel is isiKhunywa sasekhaya, herbs that my ancestors felt Guti for the continuation of my journey I would need. And it was strange to me that I had more of these dreams or more of this knowledge unlocked to me when I had now taken on isiThunywa, and it depends on how you look at it. But for me, I think it was really my ancestors saying, Guti, now that you've found God, we can trust you with our assets and really know that you won't do wrong with them, because umuthi uyaphilisa, umuthi uyabulala, so your mindset and your framework really determines how you use their tools. And I think continually, I've been shown more and more over time. So my practice continues to grow, but I definitely see, Guti, without having done isiThunywa, this would not have happened, But I also encourage that you do it your way and in the way that your guides show you to do it, as I did. So, I was shown where to go. I was instructed a lot of the things that would be happening in this process, good and bad, and for me that was very helpful, because this was a very guided process. This was a way more guided process for me than I had ever had before in my life. And I thought it was such a great affirmation that you should do this process, because then once I was done, my ancestors went back to their mode of more vague communication. But in the time of the training, they really came through for me. They really forewarned me and showed me a lot of things beforehand. And I was so, so grateful. I feel like I've said a lot, but I really hope that you get the best of messages out of what I've said. And I really hope that when you do make the decision on training, you do let your guides guide you down this path, and enjoy it. It's such a beautiful journey, this one, if you allow yourself to actually learn. There's a lot of things that you can cut out, for example, it doesn't matter the environment that you're in. It doesn't matter that you're uncomfortable. What does matter, though, is how much you're willing to overcome, how much you're willing to learn, and how much you take back with you, And I know that people feel it's also hard because in these places, sometimes you can't ask questions. And that's okay. I was not a questioning trainee, because I knew, Guti, if I wanted to question, I could question everything when I was at home. But the learning for me of the sequence, and then being able to test whether these methods work when I was home, was more important to me, because I've also always felt like I don't like asking questions because sometimes I feel like, but this person must know what they're doing and what they're talking about. So why don't I first allow them to teach me? And then I really sit down and I think about it in my own way. And even if it's 10 years or 5 years later, I go back and I ask the questions, I tested a lot of things in my own Dumba first before I went back and asked my Gobela the questions, or I tried to fill the gaps with what my ancestors were now giving me as methods. I was not there a lot to ask questions because at that time I was desperate to get the healing work, and because as time went by, I could see things, and I could see that I was changing and my life was changing. There was no need for me to actually really question the process because, funny enough, what was being done was giving me results, whether I knew her methods or not, So I could see, Guti, if today sigezile or ngezile mina kusasa ngithola umsebenzi, then it means whatever she did for me was working, and other people might think ukuthi I'm crazy for adopting that, but I think that's why we're all different. I come from a very old school way of teaching when it comes to izinto zezangoma, and I feel ukuthi that way has worked for me over the years because it's been tougher, so I can face a lot of tough things because my Gobela was tough on me, but yeah, I think I'm done. All the best to anyone who needed to hear this message. My ancestors talk when they need to talk and keep quiet when they need to keep quiet, so I feel like maybe today this will resonate with someone. Ngiyabonga for listening. Thokozani.